Welcome back to another Fabulous Dream channel. I'm Jay from Jay Books Corner, and today we are here to talk about Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. We're about to jump into an extremely long video. I just want to preference like a good snack as I take you through, so many things that happen in this book. This book was a whirlwind of an experience for me, and the first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to jump you guys back to a time of where I was talking about my experience of rereading Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron. That's how I started out this video, so that's where we'll start as well, and then we'll jump into my full-on spoiler reading vlog for Chain of Thorns. Beforehand, I want to mention that there are a few chapter times linked down below. Obviously, if you want to skip over this intro, you totally can. If you want to jump straight into the vlog, you totally can. If you want to jump over like my reviews of my recaps of those books, and you want to jump straight into the vlog, or also towards the end of this vlog, the last big clip that I filmed was me reading the last like 3 or 4 chapters of the book in case anything big happened in it, and I wanted my reaction on camera. And it's pretty sped up and stuff, but it's there. And so I also blocked it out in the chapter times in case you guys don't want to watch that. You guys just want to jump into the like outro before the second outro, because I'm refilming the outro, or I'm filming like a second outro on top of this, because the ending of this book opens up a few storylines, and I wanted to point you in the direction of some novellas that can help solve those storylines for you without really you having to go like digging through the internet or expecting them to pop up in other places. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into that like recap review thing I did for when I reread those books. I did reread Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron, and I want to talk about my reread experience going into this and what I'm expecting to get out of it. Let's go ahead and start with Chain of Gold. Chain of Gold, originally when I read it, I gave it a 3.25. On reread, it got bumped up to a 4.5. Now, very importantly enough, I have been doing a Shadowhunter reread in timeline, and I use it to get it, like, ready for the new release, but also I've been reading the entirety of the Infernal Devices, which is behind me, and then I've been reading all the novellas and stuff as well. And so by the time I got here, I was so well known with the characters and so excited to read Cordelia and James' love story and everybody else's that this book blew me out of the water on second read. I also have to say that I forgot a lot about this story, about the virus and the disease and things are those lines that plague the tale of this story. I also remember they have to get married in the end, but that was like about it. So this was a great reread. Highly recommend Chain of Gold. Chain of Iron, on the other hand, was a really, really interesting time because this did deal with second book syndrome, in my opinion. Chain of Iron has a lot happening in the last like 200 pages, but a lot of it, I remembered a lot of it because it like really stuck with me. It was one of those stories that like Chain of Iron was so much better than Chain of Gold when I read it the first time that I got a 5. It's now a 4.5. They're about down even, so I'm hoping Chain of Thorns will bump us up to a 5 for this series. I just really liked where Cordelia and James's like relationship went and things are those lines. If you guys want to know more of my thoughts and opinions about both these books, I'll link both reviews up in the card. Plus, I did a whole timeline reread video for this section of the Shadowhunter world, which will go up relatively soon as well, and I do talk a little more in-depthly about that. Yet in that video, I do talk about timeline and things that were really intriguing. Interestingly enough, I think guns are what I'm looking forward to the most in Chain of Thorns. I'm also looking forward to, we're going to Paris again and things are those lines. And so I'm curious to see the scope of it, where we're headed, how Grace's storyline plans out, and how Jesse's storyline. And, there's a lot of questions I'm going into this, and I'm really looking forward to it. And so, yeah, this book is a beast. I think it's the longest one out of the set. 778 pages is what this one clocks in at. This one's 656 pages. For instance, this took me 2 days to read. I read half the book the first day, half the book the second day. This one took me like a week to read, and I broke it up more individually. And I don't know how. We'll see how Chain of Thorns goes. If you guys have never been here for a Shadowhunter like specific book reading vlog, they're chaotic. I do have a lot of fixations on certain characters, and I will deem certain storylines not updatable about. I won't lie, and I tend to update you guys in big chunks with long stances where I'm sitting here and just talking to you, so be prepared for that. I'll update you guys on the big moments and the brief moments, and I'm gonna try to read like the last like 200 to 300 pages while just sitting down and reading the book with the audiobook, whereas the rest of the book I just plan on listening to as I go through it. The audiobook on the speed that I listen to is still like 10 hours long. It's not like I'm going to be able to finish it today and tomorrow. It's going to take me a few days for sure to read it, but I'm hoping for greatness. Let's go ahead and jump into Chain of Thorns. I'm so excited and both super anxious. We have our first update for Chain of Thorns. I decided to make this a little bit easier on all of us involved. I'll update you per chapter. So that's how we're doing Chain of Thorns. I think that'll probably be like 39 updates. I really hate that. We open it. We have a few things to talk about. First thing being a the prologue. The prologue is about James. He's having nightmares of Bedio and Leviathan in this like other world, which I'm assuming we'll eventually see in this book in the third act is my best guess. Sometimes we've had one before, pretty sure in Queen of Darkness. That was a halfway mark, so that it could also be the midpoint. So we'll wait and see. But she's having dreams, and okay, him and Magnus and Will are now on the search for Lucy, who's obviously with Malcolm and Jesse. They believe he's a corpse, but Jesse is obviously alive. They don't know that. And so that's kind of what they're doing, and that's really what the opening is about. So it's the very end of the prologue as they're talking about and they're going through where Lucy could be, and they believe they figured it out. We also have a quote here that really broke my heart, because I do think James is a lot like Will, and everybody keeps telling me he's like a lot like Will. There's a line on page 6 that says, all his life his father had seemed the strongest man he knew, the most principled, the most fierce with his love. Will did not question himself. No, James was nothing like Will Herondale, and that hurt me. That hurt me a lot, so that's all I had to say. Next one, we move over into the first, Twilight Days, first chapter. It starts out with Cordelia and Matthew. Cordelia and Matthew are in actually it starts out with a dream sequence again. It starts off with a dream sequence with her dancing with James, and then she sees Grace, and then she wakes and it's like a daydream type of thing that she's having. And she's there at a shop, and they're in Paris, and she's dressing. She's trying to shop for dresses. They go back and forth. They go through a few different dresses, and she's kind of catching us up to speed of what's been going on while they've been there for 2 or 3 days. Matthew hasn't drinking a dip, nothing. He's not drinking. The lady believes that they're in an affair, and she's calling everybody by her maiden name, Carstairs, instead. And then Matthew promises her to take her to hell with him later on the evening. I'm curious to see what that means, especially because he's not drinking. She feels really, really bad about leaving everybody alone. I mean, that was like the biggest takeaway from this entire section, is that she just feels really, really bad for doing it. She is obviously attuned to Lilith and things, and so she's going back and forth for pages and pages about it. She believes, she can't have a good time in Paris, even though this isn't a spiritual for her. It is a spiritual for Matthew. He's never looked happier. The next scene is the Magnus, James, and Will scene. He ends up falling asleep. They end up not. The first place doesn't end up working out. I like a lot of the world building that is happening here, but nothing really to talk about. And he ends up falling asleep, and he ends up saying the words of Lilith. He also ends up saying the words of Cordelia in his dream, because that's what he was dreaming about. And Magnus is scared because he said the word of Lilith, who is the mother of demons. They're hoping that he'll be a little more clear when they get to the next place. They believe they figured out where Lucy could be, but they're not sure. Lucy, having brought back Jesse, is basically in a coma, and she keeps coming out of it and in of it, but only she can tell she's in and out of it. And so she hears people moving around, and she wants to scream for Jesse, and Jesse's basically begging Malcolm to bring her back with magic because he believes that she's in a lot of pain and suffering. And he says, well, she doesn't wake up the next few days, we will do that, but we still have to give it time to see if it'll work or not. And so that's basically the entirety of theirs. Adirade, I cannot pronounce that fucking word, damn. I can hear it in my brain. I'm like, oh, that's totally how you pronounce it, and I just can't do it. Jump over to her, and she is the last scene in the last character that we see. So obviously Flora, which is her mom, took in Grace's last book to help her because they were black thorns, whatever. Interestingly enough, with Grace, she actually went to the Silent City because her mother is on trial to, either go for her mother or go against her mother. I'm not really sure what the plan is, and she left in the middle of the night, and Tatiana Blackthorn is the one going to be interrogated and stuff, and so she left. But that being said, they don't really know anything about their dad, and so her mother is really scared about bad news that could come out of it. And so Charlotte and Gideon come to the door. They ask if they've heard any news about their dad, and they have not. And she goes into her dad's office, and she sees this. So on page 27, no, not events, mistakes, errors, sins. It was a record of any doings of Herondales and Lightwoods had caused, but her father considered problems. Anything that could be characterized as irresponsible or ill-conceived was noted here. And then we have 12301, G2L, absent from council meeting without explanation, CF angry. 6998, WW in Waterloo says WHTH refused meeting, causing them to disrupt the market. And 8195, head of Oslo Institute refuses to meet with TH, citing her heritage. Then she also found She had a creamy white stationery, no, not notes, but a letter, and so she grabbed it and quickly threw it into her blouse, and Flora comes in mad, and that's the end of the chapter, and that's my end of the update, and I'll be doing that again, over and over and over again. I would like to mention, I don't want to show you because it is direct spoilers for parts of the story going forward. Also, if a chapter doesn't have anything interesting in it, I won't go through it like I went through the first chapter. It's just the first chapter. I'm really excited about it. There is pictures throughout the entirety of the book, like they did with Queen Air and Darkness, and so I will showcase them as we go through them. If I go to work tomorrow, I guess I'll pack the book and I'll take it with me, and I'll give you guys updates while I'm at work. Let's go ahead. I'll update you guys with chapter 2. Can only go up from here. I'm really curious to see where the story's going. I'm really intrigued, and I don't really know yet. Hi, so I want to come here and tell you guys I'm skipping chapter 2. The audio, the lighting, everything else was really bad, so there's no reason to put it in here, so let's go and jump to chapter 3. So, chapter 3, we start out with James and Will and Agnes, and they learn everything that we learned last book about Jesse and like Belial and like whole 9 yards. So that was like that big catch up, and Will's big takeaway is he was glad his son had friends, but he felt bad that he couldn't feel like he could be confided in, which is quite sad. And then Matthew did take Cordelia to the place of hell, which is like this exclusive club, kind of like it is in London, a version of that like in London type of thing. In this one, they went and saw like a warlock who could talk to ghosts. And first they talk about this like someone who needs to get back chickens, and then the lady wants to talk to Cordelia herself based on her dad, and her dad had some notes to say as well. There's some interesting conversations about Cortana and the reason why she can't wield it because of Lilith and things, and how she doesn't want to say Lilith's name. I thought all that stuff was really interesting, but the thing that like obviously most intrigued me was this. But I must warn you first, they will not wait, and the sharpest weapon lies close at hand. I don't understand who will not wait. In the time there will be sorrow but not regret. There will be quiet but not peace. They wake. If I can tell you nothing else, let me tell you this. They are waking. It cannot be stopped. And I'm assuming this has to go with direct reference to the dreams James has been having about this hellish land. That's my best guess. So that's where we're at. It was a relatively short chapter, and because I couldn't update you guys right away, I didn't want to go into the next chapter and be confused based on what I read. I'm going to have to stop doing that and just move forward, but tomorrow I'll be home when I read it. So far, really blown away. Some big takeaways I'm having so far is just how different the opening is than most Cassandra Clare books. They're on the run, and it reminds me a lot of like City of Lost Souls and stuff, where that one felt very different. This one feels very different from a normal Shadowhunters book, which I'm really enjoying. That's all I got for you. Update you when I read more. Coming in here to update you guys on Chain of Thorns. We are talking about Blessed Ghosts, which is chapter 4, and there's so much information to talk about in this chapter. I'm going to sum it up pretty quickly and read you guys a line from one of the scenes as well, so get prepared. But essentially what this one is about is it goes back and forth between Magnus, Will, and James, and Lucy, Lucy, Jesse, and Malcolm. And all three stories are starting to intertwine. It starts out with Lucy and Jesse and Malcolm at a dinner table. Malcolm ends up leaving. Lucy and Jesse end up having this extremely good kiss, like a good kiss, and then they end up almost like fucking. It's kind of weird. It's a little weird. I don't think that's where that was headed, but it was going to be very petty foreplay. We end up getting a knock on the door, and those people obviously being Will, James, and Magnus. Then we jump over to Cordelia. Cordelia is having dreams of her dad begging her to wake her. I do wonder what this means. Dreams are very key important for foreshadowing for Cassie's books, so let's keep note of it. We also have, then we go back over to Lucy and stuff, and Lucy has to explain everything to her dad and everything. Eventually they do understand where she's coming from. They're trying to figure out what to do with Jesse. Jesse says, let me go off to some faraway land and become in another Shadowhunter world, another Shadowhunter Institute, and become somebody no one knows, because now he can take the runes and everything else on those lines. He feels really awkward about the runes he already has, and he wished he could burn them off and get new runes placed upon him, because those are the runes of the dead Shadowhunters from time again. And even though it's been now proven to us that Jesse has no control over about any of those actions, the council or the conclave would not agree with any of it. And I definitely do agree with that statement, because the Clave is going into a very tricky part of their history. We're ending this book with the Clave not being great. It just sucks. And that's like one of the good things about the ending of like the Infernal Devices. The Clave is in a pretty good place in the Infernal Devices, and you start to see those shakeups and stuff in the novellas leading up into the Chain of Gold series. Chain of Gold takes place in 1903. The next story we get from the Clave is not till like 1940 something, 50 something. It's gonna be a minute in between time. I definitely know the Clave goes through some rough times in between those like 40 to 50 years. Either way, that's a tangent. We'll get off it. Jump back onto the story. They eventually just agree. They don't know what they're gonna do. Lucy said, I can take him back home and I can go in front of the Clave. You'll use the mortal sword in front of the Clave, and then they'll ask you how you did it, how you got these powers, and it will be revealed that Badil is Tessa's mom, and that will cause a bunch of problems for everybody. And so they're still not sure what to do with Jesse Blackthorn, but they did come down to the agreements of this. So this is something Malcolm says, because Malcolm is showing back up and they keep having this conversation. Ironically, Malcolm and Magnus are really close friends, if you guys did not know. And Malcolm and Magnus actually end up getting into a little bit of fight, which I thought was really interesting. The line we're playing, I'm going to tell you in a minute, is not part of that though. On page 84, we have a line that says, Jesse Blackthorn cannot join the London Enclave, said Malcolm. But because of the hit of my history, my research, nobody knows more about the Blackthorn family than I do because of Anna. Or not Anna, because of... If I can find a means by which Jesse can return to the Shadowhunter Society without suspicion, could we then consider this whole matter put behind us? And Magnus says, alright, you have until tomorrow. So that's not a lot of time, but we'll see where it goes. Then we lastly end with an Arnarande scene, or an Anna Lightwood scene in Arnarande. Anna is going through a crisis right now because she's in love with the girl of her dreams. She can't tell the girl of her dreams she's in love with her because Arnarande is very much a closeted lesbian, and it's been a very cute but down low relationship that we've all enjoyed. Well, she ends up showing up and she brings the letter that she ends up finding in the fire, and they read the letter together, and it's basically her dad is blackmailing people of the Clave. This looks like a first draft, the second draft, because there's elements of the letter that he wrote out that he was not sure of, that he, I'm assuming, eventually would find out. And then Anna ends up letting Arane stay, and they both agree that this is a bad idea. Flora tells her that if your dad ever found out, we'd kick you out in the streets anyways, and so she left. So this is a very interesting development. I'm very curious to see how this goes. If you guys did not know, Anna's parents are extremely forgiven and very happy with how their daughter turned out, and do not care that she would never bear children and all these other things, because Leslie and Gabriel are great parents. So that brings us to the end of the chapter, and I have one line on page 71 that I laughed at and I agreed with. I read the book, so I know why, but I did agree with. I am somewhat insulted, Magnus said, that you went to Malcolm Fay to seek his advice on what to do about Jesse and not come to me. Usually I am the one you annoy first, and I consider that a proud tradition. And Malcolm, or Magnus, get ready. Be a very big proud tradition as we move forward, I have a feeling. Alright, I'll update you guys after I read the next chapter, and talk to you soon. We're about 800 pages, which I'm very excited about. I just got done reading Chapter 5, Realms Above. Chapter 5 was a mix of all the characters, which was really nice. I think it's the first one that we really did tackle every little subgroup. So they came up with a plan for Jesse to join London Institute, which we'll go over. Cordelia also has a few things going on here, and then Arade is pining for Anna, just like Anna's pining for Arade. So first off, let's talk about the James, Magnus, Jesse, Lucy, Malcolm thing. There's some really good lines in here about family and about bloodlines and stuff along those lines. I always forget that it's the Tatiana is a Blackthorn. Blackthorns, if you guys did not know, is probably my favorite Shadowhunter tree line. I adore the Blackthorns. They are the most crazy, I would say, out of all the trees and stuff, and I just very much enjoy them. Them and the Lightwoods hold a very special place in my heart. I just forget that, and so they decide to bring him back as a long lost. Hold on, I actually have a full family thing. So they had 4 kids. Felix and Anna had 4 kids: Annabelle, Abner, Jerome, and Ezekiel. Ezekiel ended up leaving because he hated the treatment of downwarders, and so he went to America, got married, and had kids, but it's not in the Iron Citadel, so they can't figure out, they will have no record of it whatsoever. So if he comes back and he says, I'm Ezekiel's grandkid, I realize my heritage, and I want to come find who I am, kind of like Kit, interestingly enough, they will bring him back, and so that's how they're going to welcome him back into society. They're going to tell a group of people, the Silent Brothers, who don't really talk to the Clave, and then we're also going to tell Grace, and then one other person. The other people in the Blackthorn family, obviously, as well, such as Gabriel, Gideon, Sophie, and Cicely, are all going to be on this. Obviously, Tessa will also know this is what they're going to do. That's a lot of people to keep track of a lie, so it does make me nervous, because of the expansiveness of it being so big. And let's go ahead and jump over to the Cordelia storyline. Cordelia is with Matthew. She can tell that Matthew really likes her, and that he's really having a good time, and that he's enjoying it. Interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure he has a bracelet bit similar to the bracelet that James had to control his impulses for drinking, which I don't really like that as a response. I hope that kind of blows back in his face. And they end up having this like conversation about all the different things, especially about Charles and Alistair and how Charles is the one that broke it off, but Matthew's like, but my brother had always loved him and stuff like that. And so that was a really nice conversation. They were Lucy and James had a relatively similar conversation as well. Not so much about like love and Matthew and, you know, Thomas and things, but more on the lines of like him showing him society, Jesse's society, and getting him in first runes and stuff for, you know, James to do those things. She also gave him the advice to go to Paris, which I think is great advice, in my opinion. They just go back and forth, and they have a few conversations, and that's really it. Like I said, the honor stuff is the same thing, and then, I don't lie, I got kind of pulled out of it at the very end. They're going on a date. Matthew and Cordelia are going on a date, and so I'll tell you how that goes. Also, chapter 6 has our first full-length picture in the novel, so I'll show that to you as well. Writing, and then we'll go back to reading. Got some shit to talk about. Oh my god, some drama is a brewing. Let me explain it to you, okay? Reading the new chapter. Alright, I just got done reading chapter 6, Through Blood. So this one was a mixture of Cordelia, but also Grace. Oh, and James. So James was confronted by... Let's do James first. He's the littlest section. James was confronted by Brother Zachariah, or Jim, comes to him and says that Grace is still in the Citadel. She's told them everything, and they're keeping it a secret for now on. And so it's your choice to spread the information that she was using him. He wants to tell Cordelia first, so they can get back together and realize they love each other. We'll get to Cordelia's section last. It's the longest. Grace is obviously in the Iron Citadel, or the City of Bones. She is being interviewed and interrogated, and she ends up getting talked to, not by Matthew, I have to find it. Christopher ends up coming down and talking to her to help him with a little thing he's working on, and it's a beautiful friendship, and I'm very happy for it. So now moving over to Cordelia and Matthew. Cordelia and Matthew end up going to this club for their first date, but it's not like an actual date. She didn't go there thinking it was a date. They're just going there to have fun. They end up not being able to get in because Cordelia is part Lilith. Lilith ends up attacking, which was really interesting. She can't attack back. There's a little action scene, and James thought everybody off. He tells her, Cordelia, that he loves her, and then they end up kissing in the middle of this area, and I have a picture to show you guys. Look how gorgeous that is. I don't accept these people, but look how gorgeous they are, even though I don't accept them. This was spoiled for me, them kissing, because I had found this one first, and I was like, oh, that is a spoiler alert. But warnings. So that's my warning to you, if you're reading it with me. It's a rough one. They end up kissing, and they end up being like, he's like, I'm gonna make a woman out of you in the streets or something along those lines, and we should probably go back to the hotel room so no one sees this. And so they end up going back to their room, and inside their room, they end up going over to Cordelia's room, because Matthew's like, my room is a mess, and James is sitting there waiting for them to return. I'm assuming looking disheveled, but I'm not really sure, so I'm curious to see where that's going, and that's what I got for you. We finished chapter 7, which brings us to a bunch of shit went down. Oh my. So let's go ahead and get started. It starts out with Alistair and Thomas, and they're having a very cute moment. And they both really want to kiss each other, but they can't kiss each other, and they're both helping each other. It's fun. I really liked it. Alistair disappears. Thomas is left there to be greeted by the new Jesse. Also, the rest of his family who just arrived. Then we go over to Cordelia. The rest of the chapter, it's a relatively short chapter, takes place with Cordelia exclusively, if I'm not mistaken. And they kind of all get into a fight. He very much realized what they were doing. He had been there for a while, and he went into Matthew's room and he picked up a bottle. Matthew is obviously drinking. That was one of the big takeaways here. Cordelia feels defeated on both sides. She learns that, he's always loved her, but she feels that it's not fair because, he made out with somebody while they were married. He had her longing for him, but he wouldn't do anything about it because he only wanted Grace. She doesn't understand the whole entire parameters just yet about Grace, but she feels absolutely horrible. And then Matthew feels absolutely horrible because one, it's his parabatai, so there's this mixture, and she feels bad because she just want to get in between that type of relationship due to the weirdness of it. It came down to the fact that Matthew and Cordelia were left standing in the hotel room with James walking out. He said it's one of the hardest things. Now we are dealing with the aftermath of that. 142 already. This book is popping up. We haven't really gotten to, I would say, many big twists and turns just yet. But I am super curious to see where the story's going, where the relationships are going. I'm really happy. I really do hope that the Matthew-Cordelia relationship is cut short very quickly, as that is probably like one of my least favorite developed relationships so far in Cassie books. We already did it once. I already read it. They've already done the whole pair up ties thing, love thing. I don't need it again. Love triangles in general, I just don't really need anymore. I think with the nuances that do come with if you read Queen of Air and Darkness and the Dark Artifice and what she does with love triangles there, I think just having this here is not great. Plus, you cannot beat your number one love triangle, and that is Maggie, Jim, Will, and Tessa. Like, that is the ultimate love triangle. Trying to do it again is just not making me feel right, especially because, like, we all ultimately know who she's going to end up with, which means this is just causing more pain than necessary. To end out this evening, we finished off with chapter 9. Wait, did I not update you guys at the end of chapter 10? I think I just jumped back into reading. My boyfriend came out and made a sandwich and stuff down here. And so I think I just jumped back into reading. So I think we have a 2-chapter update. Luckily enough, chapter 8 was really short. Chapter 8 was Anarane going back to her home with Anna and a bunch of other people to collect her stuff when her dad shows up. And then the next section is the continuation of Cordelia and James in this weird place with Matthew and stuff. And the Magnus shows up saying everybody has to return due to the Inquisitor has returned and Tatiana Blackthorn has escaped from the island Citadel and has joined forces with Video, which is the end credit scene for Chain of Iron, which some people have mixed back to. Now, Gold Rush is a really interesting, just in general, chapter. I say this because there's so much that happens, but nothing happens in it. The big plot points here for this one are the fact that they all return home. They all have to learn a bunch of information. Some of this stuff is a little info dumpy, but it was told good. So they learned that Tatiana was walking around without any chaperones because the Island Citadel, as we do know, is in the middle of nowhere. We've been there twice, I think, in the series. Big reason why. And so she ended up figuring out how to escape. So then one of them saw an angel they believed actually been a Prince of the Demons Video, came down and was covered in blood and had said, don't send your, talking basically to Lilith, don't send your Padawan or whatever they're called after me. Obviously that's what made, Cordelia kind of get spooked. If you thought of sending your Padawan after me, you will bring great doom upon the world. So that's an important line, obviously. Obviously she will end up having to go after her. I don't think we got to the scene of where she has cut him off the back with Cortana. It's interesting. She has no idea where Cortana is, but that's not his point. And they kind of go back and forth, and then they start to split up. So they have to introduce Jesse Blackthorn to the group. Jesse Blackthorn will eventually be introduced, but first we go over to Matthew. And Matthew's having conversations with James. He had told James that no matter what, he's going to be there for him, no matter what happens. He also explains that the bottle took him over. It wasn't him who was drinking, it was the bottle that was drinking. And James still doesn't understand why Matthew has this drinking problem to begin with at such a young age. Obviously we do, but Matthew does not. James does not. Then he actually ends up wanting to help him and becoming like a really, really good friend, and it just showed their greatness. And also he's still very confused about the whole situation of like, how could one now be in love with one girl when they were supposedly in love with the other. Just realizes that there is something completely different about James and the way he talks about Cordelia and the way he talks about Grace and the way he handles Grace, and how he's happy that Grace is in jail and he's not happy that Cordelia won't come home with him. Matthew says, I'm dropping everything. He asks, why you ever tell me that you were in love? And he said, because she was your wife, which, fair. And he's like, how did you know I was going to fall with her? And she's like, because everybody does. Also fair. Then him and Cordelia end up having a conversation as well about if she wants to return home, and she's basically said that place is dead to her. So that's really interesting development as we go forward. There's so much book left, so it's a fine development, but it's interesting. Then obviously everybody meets Jessie, and Lucy just seems so happy, and everybody just agrees that she just seems so happy, so they will try their damnedest. I read this chapter a little bit ago, so I'm a little behind on some of the information. That's the reason why I just haven't really had time to sit down to talk to you guys about Chain of Thorns. I read it when I thought I was going to have time, and we are talking about chapter 10, The Wanderer. It starts out with Cordelia, it looks like. What this one is about. She's talking about Alistair. You're talking about the relationship and things like that. Her mother is very accepting. Oh my god, this is the chapter where she learns that her brother is planning on going back to Peru with her mother, and her mother offered her to come back to Peru as well. That's what that whole section is. That's what that is. Then we go over to James, and James is he goes back home. That's what it is. Talking to Effie, how he says that you're gonna need to get her stuff together, Cordelia. So she's not living here anymore, at least during the time of the baby. And then he goes in searching for something. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. Okay, so he finds Christopher. Oh, that's right. The two friends break off. So Thomas goes towards Matthew, and Christopher goes towards James for the Mirage maps, right? And they start talking about Cordelia, and they start talking about the entire experiment and the experience and things. And so trying to win them back over, and so they can have pretty much like a good relationship. They do, at least Christopher says that we cannot have this relationship without Cordelia. So whatever this is, you guys do need to figure it out type of thing, which I do agree. And then we go over to Thomas, who finds Matthew, and Matthew and Thomas have having this whole conversation about how he was in love with Cordelia and how he obviously can't be in love with Cordelia anymore, and so forth and so forth. And then Thomas comes out and says that he also has been carrying a secret, because he said to Matthew that in order for you guys to get above this is more than just a girl. You've been carrying these burdens for such a long time. You have to get past them. You have to talk to him about them. The reason, the miscarriage and stuff that he calls, that no one knows about except for Cordelia. Part of the reason why I feel like he fell in love with her. And he says, I've also been in love with Alistair. Stairs. They have like a really, really cute, really good exchange. He comes out as gay, which is also really cute. And so now we're moving on to chapter 11, which is called The Devil's Paddling, which that's and so I'll update you guys after 11's done. Update for Chain of Thorns. We finished chapter 10. Chapter 10 was really the group getting together for the first time, and no one really talked about the big elephant in the room. And then the other big thing that I noticed was the fact that Cordelia got this sense of love and affection towards her, which I also really enjoy. I know she did some pretty fucked up things, but I don't personally think she should be humiliated for them or anything like that. I don't think anybody in the group sees it. Their number one thing is to get her from a paladin from Lilith, so she would use Katana on. So I'm assuming that's what's going to be the next big part of the book, is the exploration of that, and also figuring out where Tatiana left to go to. So Tatiana, I'm not really sure. I wonder if she can cross her lands. I know that's possible. It takes a lot of magic to do it, but it is possible. They've done it here in this book as well. And so I wonder if Video figured out a way to bring her over to wherever he's at currently. But also I was wondering, for to separate from Lilith, they're thinking about killing Lilith. We know that Lilith doesn't die, or I can't remember if she comes back to life, to be honest. It's been so long since I read the Mortal Instruments, where Lilith plays a big part in those. We know that Lilith doesn't die, or if she does die, she doesn't die permanently and she can come back. I have to wonder how they do break this curse, if they break the curse. I couldn't see Cortana not being used again in this book. We do know Cortana does find a new owner later on, because she's being used in other places in the Mortal Instrument past, the life of Cordelia. The sword lives on. So that's where we're at. I'm curious to see where it goes. Alright, I'll update you guys. I have 12 and 13 to talk about. 12, what was the big moments in it? We have this great moment between Cordelia and James sitting on the stairs, up where he basically professes his love and she wants to kiss him, but she backs out, which was great. And we learn that Tatiana Blackthorn is found in the moors and she's horribly injured. I believe, I have a strong feeling, it is a trap. They don't all believe it's a trap like I do, but that's fine. They think they're going to introduce Jesse at their Christmas party that is coming up, that Jesse and James have decided to work together to train, because he's not really up to fighting Sansa the Shadow Hunter because he's been dead for so long, which, makes sense. And then Matthew was over at Anna's for a long time, and they ended up having a long conversation, and she tells him that he can trust her no matter what, and he still doesn't believe that he can. And then we move on to chapter 13. Chapter 13 was the one I just read. No wonder this seemed like such a long section, because I read two chapters. Angels Alone wasn't really that long of a chapter though. Angels Alone consisted of a scene that takes place with Cordelia and Lucy, where they get into this huge fight and they say some pretty horrendous things to one another. And basically it's just how Cordelia feels like Lucy wasn't there for her, and that Lucy should have been more honest, and that whatever happens in Cordelia's life, she's always there to tell Lucy, and Lucy has been keeping all these big secrets, and so it's blown up in their faces, of course. And then Lucy is just really mad at the fact that Cordelia hurt James so bad, because she can see it in his eyes, and she just is so mad about it. And they end up having this big fight, and she ends up throwing Grace back in her face, which I think is appropriate. I don't think Lucy really understood how much it hurt her, and so once again, I think it's important. And so once that's over, over and they kind of throw off their friendship, and she says a line that really stuck with her. So on page 240 she says, "Oh Lucy," Cordelia said in despair, "it's like you don't live in the real world, you live in the world of stories. The beautiful Cordelia who can do anything she likes, but in the real world we don't get everything we want. Maybe we shouldn't." Great line. Thoroughly enjoyed myself with that one. It hurt like hell, but I enjoyed myself. And so then we go back to Lucy, who's back at the institute because she ends up jumping out of Cordelia's window. Doesn't seem like it's an odd thing for Lucy to do. She ends up talking to Justine, who I've never enjoyed, to be honest with you, and I liked her better in this series than I did in her initial series before she died. I liked her before she died, to be fair. Like, she was like, I don't know, I wasn't injured by her death, but like, I liked her better. And now she's back to her bitchy self because she learned that almost all the interactions she's had with Lucy to this point had been through her power. She even mentioned something like, you should get rid of it, and that right there just intrigues me because normally, you know, Cassie doesn't say things that are not important, so keep that in mind. Maybe that'll come up later on. And then she ends up going to, which is really funny, just made so very much like, you can't be around with this boy alone. She ends up going there, and they end up to Jessie, and they end up having this huge makeout sesh, which ends up turning a little more dirty, but not super dirty. She ends up going into a ghost world because of it, and so she's going to confront Malcolm about it. With Malcolm, she's hoping could provide some answers, because in order to bring him back, she had to go into this ghost world, it seems like. And that's all we got. I'll update you guys soon. Alright, I'm gonna come here and update you guys on two chapters that I just read. 15 and 16. 15 was mostly the exploration of the Thorn house. They were searching for something to point them towards Tatiana and stuff. Some other big moments that happened in it was Cordelia got attacked, and we heard a line under the lines of Seraph blades will not kill them, and James comes in and saves her and shoots and kills the demon. I don't know anything else past that. They end up having an altercation because she's mad at the fact, and she's just really frustrated with what to do in the situation. She also feels odd because Matthew didn't come along. He ended up doing a little errand for Adirondre, or for Anna. Then her and Anna have this conversation about how Matthew's going through so much that maybe like you should go talk to him and stuff, and so she ends up going to go talk to Matthew. In the beginning of the next chapter, they have this conversation about past mistakes and stuff, about how he did try to quit drinking when they first went to Paris, but it made him so ill that he could not move and for more than 12 hours, and so he began drinking because of it to keep up with, you know, Cordelia and wanting to show her Paris and all this other fun stuff. And so he has been sober for a day, and he's severely ill, part of the reason why he wasn't there. The other big points is, you know, now that Jessie knows everything about Grace, he feels really awkward about the situation because he cares for Lucy so much, and he doesn't understand how Lucy will take the information if he gives it. And so he tells James about it, and they end up having this conversation, which was pretty good, and they end up confiding into one another, which is really nice. Cordelia trying to get Matthew to confide in the group about what he did all of those years ago, and he still won't do it. Oh, Adirondre and Anna went back to her house, and she realized that her parents are keeping up her room, and they end up making out on the bed, which was really nice. We have our next picture. That's all I got for you. Alright, update you for next. I'm gonna come here and give you guys another check-in update. I read 2 more chapters. That puts us like at the halfway mark, by the way, which makes sense with something about the review. I gotta mention it. If you see a face behind me, it's the mannequin. Okay, that's all. Okay, jump into it. We do have a picture showcase. Lots of things were happening in between these chapters. If we started on chapter 17, which is the Lamp of Night. So they're at Matthew's flat. James, Thomas, Jessie, they all came to help Matthew in his time of need because Cordelia was nervous and he didn't want to see Cordelia that way. They drew an Arazzi to help with the hangover, and then Christopher handed him a flask that should help him get rid of the need for it. Not the actual part of it or anything like that, just the need that if he doesn't come clean, he'll be wanting it more, but he doesn't need to drink more. And it should only take like 2-3 days. Yeah, this amazing photo of them all sleeping with the dog. I love it so much. It's probably my favorite one so far of the book. Then we go to Cordelia. Cordelia is doing something stupid. She decided, due to the test that she had with Bio and the fact that when she talked to, I can't think of her name, Hypatia, saying that the demons should be scared of her because she is Lilith Paladin, that she should be able to talk to them. And so her goal is to go talk to them. And so she went to go talk to them, I should say. Thomas and Alistair end up having a conversation outside the house, saying Alistair comes clean, saying he's going to move back to Persia with his mother. And then Thomas begs for him to stay, and he says something along the lines of like, it will never work out. Then something else happened that I didn't really like. So the placement of the scenes. I feel like the next scene with Cordelia, I understand there should be a broken up, but I don't know if it was necessary. I think maybe a longer scene with the Cordelia would have been made sense structurally. I would have moved this scene later, because here's the thing. It doesn't describe how much time has passed between that scene and the scene that we're about to read between her and Alistair. But he's back home, he's reading as if nothing just happened. I guess they do say it's like the next day, but she was... Timeline stuff, in my opinion, is a bit complicated here. So they end up having a whole conversation about love. Then we go over to Letty Nance, who's a brand new person. I don't remember the name at all. She's the one who's watching over Tatiana. That's basically the whole big thing here. She's excited because she's watching over this girl. Oh, and then Tatiana wants to see her children. Those are the big things. Cordelia ends up going back to the house to grab a dress because she needs a dress. And she ends up going out and she ends up talking to the demon. So on page 327 we have some information. She says Lilith wants to know, and so the demon eventually does open up and says, your mistress rages at Bedio because he occupies her realms of Eden. There shall Lilith repose and find for herself a place to rest. But even it's not his goal. He is moving, ever moving. He builds an army. They wake. They even know. Then you know. Bedio found them empty vessels he has filled with his power. They wake and rise, do his bidding, and the nothing will be ended. And then she asks empty vessels, and he says, who are not dead, I will not say more. The dead who are not dead. So I'm assuming like corpse is where we're headed with this, which once again goes back to necromancy, which seems to be such a big, that must be something that Cassandra Clare is really interested in. I did have a note, I'll tell you at the very end, between the love triangle that I thought was really annoying but also interesting. And then James comes and saves her, even though she doesn't want to be saved. It's a whole thing. So they end up fighting all the way back, but they actually end up kissing. It all turns into like a hot, heavy sesh. It gets interrupted by Jesse, because Jesse's there due to the fact that he's been reading Tatiana's book. To use a mirror to see into the other world and talk to you. Now that's his plan, is use said mirror. They all got into a fight because James wants to do this. He eventually does do this. Okay. And in the shadows Bedio, he sat upon a throne James had seen before, a throne of ivory and gold, massive in size, so even Bedio could draws by it. Though it had clearly been created for an angel, Bedio had bastardized it with his sigil, the symbol, Viking and vicious looking, with scratches all over. I marvel. And down the gold steps that led up to his seat, James drew a sharp breath, but Matthew's hands tied his sides. Was Matthew seating? He wondered. Unimportant. Bedio was not only a demon in the shadows surrounding him, crawling about at his feet, pawing at his foot of a throne, for a swarm of piglet-sized demons, worm-like, humped and creeping, and their skin gray, almost featureless, save for a pair of glowing green eyes. Chimera demons, which we had just read into. That's the ones that almost attacked. Cordelia. Bedio rose and came down the steps of his throne. It seemed he could not tell James was watching. He went as he wailed, his hand passing over his side where the wounds Cortana had dealt him still bled, raising his hand stained with his own blackish blood. Bedio sketches an archway on the air. It was as if he saw the night dim light shone through the arch, and the Chimera demons leaped and frolicked excitedly. James could hear no sound, only a sort of roaring. McCratchley's base saw Beatrice move and saw the other demon through the open arch, and then Beatrice turned and frowning near and looked towards James. Then he fell, and he fell, and he fell. And then he was found. A little thing Jim said, he ended up getting hurt in the process of all this, but that was the important part. Okay, so we jump back to Letty, who is being called by a figure. Dragon's Breath, that's really interesting since dragon's in the titles. And it's this language I could not repeat to you. And it ends up being a silent brother who's calling her. And I can't really read, it's very graphic. And as his body weighed the body of Albert Pangborn. He had died in his night clothes, the front of his shirt torn open, showing red flesh, a white bone like a gaping mouth, blood poured beneath him, and so Letty could not run. On the metal bed sat an old woman, Tatiana Blackthorn, her eyes gone dark as ink, fixed on Letty, and she began to grin. Letty watched Tatiana's mouth opened and opened, demand to standing well beyond any human jaw. From the old woman now came a low crackling sound. It sounded like she was laughing deep in her chest, but she could not move, not even when the old woman's skin split, her body shifting and changing so rapidly as if she was melting and reforming into something else, something pale and tall and skinny-limbed, bald and hairless, with the skin like a puckered burn, something that hunched in its back, hoped it crawled, something slimy and pale and white that came at Letty so fast that she had no time but to cry out, or even to cry out. The silent brother also was dead. But what the fuck fuck was that? Like, I read that and I was shook at. So I'm assuming that's what they mean. Empty husks. So it's like depressed people? So we're halfway. So that's cute. For you, I won't lie. I read part of this yesterday. So we're really just going to do a summarization. There's a lot of things that happen in these last two chapters. These last two chapters so far have been some of the most important ones. First thing first is revealed Tatiana Blackmore is not who she said she was. Her body that was discovered was not what she said she was. Chapter 19 was the Christmas party that we've been building up to. It was the entirety of the Christmas party. And so there's like a lot of different working parts. Alistair and Thomas went together. Cordelia was there. Cordelia ended up being courted both by James and Matthew, and they both had their individual scenes. So with James showed her what was inside her locket, which was just like to show her that he loved her. And it was very cute. It's a quote I couldn't read to you because it takes a little too much time going to find it. And he says, I always loved you. And she said, so you've been in love with me and Grace at the same time, giving him an out. And he said, no, I would never love her. So she's like, okay, well, now I'm confused, but I'll be back. And so she runs and hunts down Matthew, and she basically tells Matthew, I love you, I love our friendship, I love what you're doing for yourself, but you cannot do it for me, you have to do it for you, and our relationship can't go past where it is right now. Which is very adult of her, and I'm very proud of her. Good for Cordelia for letting him down. My takeaway from their relationship, this love triangle as it is concluded, is the fact that it's very similar to Jem, Tessa, and Will, and no one's talking to Jem, Tessa, or Will about it. Like, it's so similar to the point where you're just like, well, Cordelia, if you were a demon, you would have loved both of them. You would get both of them. It's crazy. There was that altercation. Then we go to Lucy and Jesse. Lucy and Jesse cannot touch. They haven't been able to touch since she brought back this entire experiment of this entire novel. They cannot touch. And so Lucy ends up talking to Malcolm about it, and Malcolm says, well, do you think this is because you drew on so much power? And so maybe this is your link to Beedle, and that if this is a link to Beedle, we need to figure out how to serve that link before. But I would not recommend touching him, kissing him, whatever, until we understand what's going on, because you could be sending Beedle like messages without knowing. And so they've called off like their relationship basically. They're still in a relationship, but it's just a strictly like talking. And they have this really cute dance sequence, which does have a picture. Hold on. So that's Jesse and Lucy. Then we go over to Grace. Grace is forming a great relationship with Christopher, and Christopher ends up going to Grace and celebrates Christmas with her, and they end up talking about different things. They share a bottle of champagne. It's super cute. Honestly, a relationship I did not know I wanted until this book, but like, look how cute they are, especially because like it's slightly manipulative. She also then ends with a request from Grace for Christopher to go tell Cordelia everything that she did and how badly she ruined her life. You know, casual things. So then everything concludes with all storylines ending up with Celia ending up on the ground crying and screaming because Tatiana Blackthorn has taken Alex, the youngest, who was born not that long ago, and it has a knife to its throat, the toddler's throat. She ends up actually escaping with the toddler, but she, in the process of this, tells everyone that they're working for Beedle. And it's like a whole thing in that, you know, that's who Tessa's dad is and all this other stuff. But she ends up taking the kid, which someone makes a remark in the next chapter about that's actually ends up sabotaging part of her plan because no one cares the fact that it's Tessa's dad because all they want is the kid back. And so they get the kid back, they're putting it on this like pause. Oh, Anna and Arade end up having this like beautiful dance sequence in the middle. That's how the last chapter ends. Chapter, the one we're just talking about. The group ends up staying, and they end up, Jesse believes that he knows where he's going to take, Tatiana will take Alex, and the group is going to go there, but they don't want to tell the Clave yet, because one, that could give away who Jesse actually is, because he's supposed to be like Jonathan or something along those lines, so who just got introduced to society. And so instead what they're going to do is they're just going to go to the Whitewoods, which is where they believe she'll take him, because he believes that if she's going to murder the kid, it's going to be at his own home, because that's what she would have done to him. And that, I think, is everything. I'm sure there's other stuff. It was a lot of information. I think it was like 3 hours of an audiobook, so it was a lot of information. I really should update you mid-chapters, but here's the thing. This book is getting long. This video is getting long. So I'll update you guys in a few chapters. Hi, so I'm gonna give you I read 2 chapters without knowing it. I didn't even know the second chapter began. That's kind of how enthralled I was. So that was interesting. I read Under a Dragon Moon in chapter 22, which I don't know the title of, because yeah. So let's figure out what kind of happened here. Okay, so they went to the house exactly where she was. They end up realizing they end up splitting up, do a few action sequences, and they end up seeing Tatiana with Alex in a a room, and she is going to put Narazzi or something along those lines on him, and which can be extremely painful. It can lead to death for someone who is young as a 3-year-old. They stop her, and then she says, because you are, the son of my maker or whatever, I will go into the guard and stuff. And so yeah, and she has this conversation with Jesse as well, and she basically says, Jesse, you're my boy, doing her whole shebang thingy. They end up getting her, it's all good, and yeah, Christopher ends up coming back, and they end up having this like really sweet moment with Grace, and I loved it so much. Grace is one of those characters that I feel so much for, but also like I can completely understand why people don't like her. Like, it's such a mixed bag for me personally. Cordelia, we got an update on the whole other part of the Galdiano situation. So it was an Eidolon demon is what it was that we saw murder everybody when we thought it was Tatiana. So that's kind of what that was. And then we got the information that they're going to be in front of the clave. The big thing with the clave, so I'm not going to really talk line by line of what they say in here because it's just ridiculous. It's so stupid, and I'm happy that it's being explored, that we're finally getting to the point where the clave is being a dick, because like I'm about to read so much about the clave being a dick as soon as this book is over. It's not even funny. Like, it's not even funny. The downwarderness of what the clave is about to do, the downwarders and stuff, I'm assuming that's what this is going to lead into. It's only like 10 years later when all that shit goes down. Either way, my brain's a little tired, so I'm a little scatterbrained. I'm very sorry. Back to what we're talking about. And so they end up going in front of the clave, and the only thing they agreed on was that Tessa obviously was his daughter and was a greater demon's daughter, and they don't like the fact that she's a greater demon's daughter. That was like the big takeaway. Some other things are Christopher decided to betray his entire family and join the clave side of things. Remember, there's one Whitewood that carries on the name, which just makes like future books so much more powerful, like especially when you get to like the end of the series, or where we're currently at the end of the series or whatever. The Dark Artifice is what I mean. It's so powerful, that name. It's just so amazing. Okay, but Christopher just like jumps on that gun. 22 is where we were talking about it. Okay. Charles, not Christopher. See, I knew it was a C name. Charles said that this is what it would be. Everybody kind of gets into a spit bat about it. Charles feels like, everybody feels like Charles betrayed him, which they did. Ari ends up talking to her dad, being like, hey, you really need to stop this, and so forth and so forth. Nothing ever works out. Oh, so the last chapter, Christopher leaves all of a sudden because his brother is in pain. And then he comes back and they have this great moment in this chapter. That's what it was. So I got the timeline of Grace wrong. But also, on that note, Grace learns that her mother is there, which they all believe is the reason why she wanted to get sent to the City of Bones, because of the fact that Grace being there. And so maybe that'll come to fruition. Oh, Thomas and Alistair have a little cute moment, but it ends on a weird note. So they end up getting a fight about Matthew. They throw out all his booze and stuff. Thomas is at a point where he just wants to enjoy his time that he has with Alistair before he leaves, and Alistair's kind of being a dick about it. And James, something else that happened. Cordelia gets pulled off to the side. Christopher, and is told all the things, I'm assuming, of Grace. And so James is searching for her at this meeting and feels betrayed because she wasn't there to back him up, his family, type of thing, because she still is a wife. And James, she wants to be around home, and so that's really, really exciting. Lucy, another big thing that happens, Lucy ends up going into Bedelia's world, and he sees her. So on page 445. Alright, here we go. So 446, the very last section of the very last page of this chapter. High walls, towers that pierce the sky, shimmering like crystals. The demon towers of Kahante. Was she seeing Idris? Ooh, gates wrought from silver and eyes rose up. They are covered with strange calligraphy-like marks rendered in alien script. A hand long and light reached out. It is not her own. It's a massive inhuman, like a hand of marble statue. It laid itself against the gate, and the rough words scowled inside of Lucy's mind. The words that were told to that lady before she was murdered. A grinning, glunching sound, images flashed through her head. An owl with glowing orange eyes, a sigil like Bedelia's, but with something oddly different about it. It's a statue of an angel holding a sword, sitting above a dying serpent. Bedelia's face turns upwards towards her, his mouth stretched wide in a grin, his eyes the color of blood, and he gets pulled back. And that's where it ends. And I was like, 23? I think that's where I need to stop. And yeah, it was. We're making great progress though. So, I have so much stuff to you on. I really don't remember. I think the Christmas party is what we last talked about, right? So that was a little bit ago. So I got a few tabs that we're going to be jumping around into. Let me just very quickly make sure that we go to the right one. Okay, so I think the last one we talked about was 23, which means I'm currently on chapter 26 and about a little bit into it. I'm going to go ahead and put my bookmark where I'm at. And we're just going to talk about the little tabs. So while I've been reading this, I have been tabbing along the way, as you guys can tell here on the side of the book, for important moments. So if I'm listening to it or whatever, and I'm doing something else, and I hear something like, oh, that's really important, I tap it so we can talk about it in this little update. So this update's going to go 23, about 26 and a half. First things first, I want to talk about Cordelia and James's relationship and how much that has evolved and changed the last time we talked about it. Last time we talked, she got pulled away from the party with Christopher. I have personally thought that Christopher was just going to tell her everything Grace said. He actually brought her to Grace, and Grace explained everything to the point that he loved her and the whole 9 yards. And so now she feels invigorated, and now she feels like she can truly just be happy in love. They start to fuck on the stairs. That was my first thought. I'll show you a beautiful picture of them almost fucking on the stairs. It's gorgeous. Love them. Love that for them. And then they actually do fuck in the bedroom in one of the most graphic sex scenes I think Cassandra Clare has had yet. I'd honestly say this series, maybe not this series, but this book, don't hold me to this exactly, because like Dark Artifice, the final like Clear Darkness, the final like main book in like timeline order, also very dark, but this might be the most mature Cassandra Clare has gone yet with the Shadowhunters, which just makes me super excited for Wicked Powers. They're so much younger though. I also had to look up ages because this was like a really graphic sex scene, and we're dealing with teenagers, and so like that was a little concerning, but they totally did that. And then they had sex again. Then I guess I didn't really have anything else. Everybody has to go and testify in front of the clave due to, you know, Tessa being Video's daughter and stuff, and so that was like a big thing. They're gonna go do that. Oh my god, right. So then we jump over to Grace, who's in the Silent City. Tatiana comes with a silent brother, and we're all like, oh, that's a little weird. And Zachariah, that we already know, brother Zachariah or Jim, is currently gone. We don't know where he went, but he's gone. And so she comes and she tortures her. Basically, I made a mark on 468 that we're going to read real fast. So we'll start with about halfway down. Can you see where that is? Okay. Anybody out there? Okay, so she tried to summon the Silent Brother to let her go and to take her mother capture, because Santiago is about to torture her. But it's too late. You have proven yourself unworthy of it over and over. Take it from her now. The Silent Brother's eyes opened. Now, like human eyes, they ripped open, leaving dangling threads where they had once been sewn shut. From between his lids shone a terrible light, a light that burned pale green like acid. These are important things to remember. And then he tore out her power. Bad day for Grace. It's a bit of an understatement, but you understand what I mean. See here, they all meet back at the Institute. Yeah, everybody's here. Tessa and all the adults went all the way already went to go threaten the clave, and Grace ends up showing up. She's crying, and she's like, they took the entire Silent City. They all go back to the Institute. They're all at the Institute. Christopher, Matthew, Charles, the whole 9 yards. The entire group is here. Matthew and Thomas end up confronting Charles. Matthew, Alistair, Thomas, and Christopher end up confronting Charles. And they're talking about how the only reason why he did not back his family is because he's being prosecuted for being gay, being blackmailed and stuff. And this whole conversation about why you should be who you should be, and that, you know, political power doesn't matter. And I really liked one of the lines where it was either Matthew or Thomas who looked at him and said, but here's the thing, you have a family that will protect you, you have a family that will love you no matter what. So you are in the perfect position right now to do something like this, even if you don't feel like you are. And I felt like that was really real and very true. So 488, and then she goes into a little bit more detail. Around 491, he said that my mother had found the key and taken from the citadel. She swallowed. He said they had come for the path of the dead. He pushed me through the door, and I fell out into the night. I was alone. I was in London, and I was alone in the graveyard. Whether Cyber Shem is innocuous, but Ignoc, etc. I don't know. I couldn't get back into the city. Couldn't even see the door I ran until I found the road. Key, what does that mean? My mother was looking for the key. She said, she and BDO, it was in her notes. A key to the prisons of the Silent City, perhaps? Nope. And in fact, he was using Chimera demons, which is also important. Already been talked about. Silent Brothers cannot be possessed. That's also important, but don't worry, we're there. You go down to the Iron Tombs on page 493, and James says, the Iron Tombs, that's how BDO managed it. Most Silent Brothers would be protected from possession, but not the ones in the tombs, because they're dead. Yeah, I remember talking about volcanic plains before, so that's new information. So, alright, chapter 25 is an action sequence. It's very action heavy, so I'm just going to talk you through it. Tati ended up choosing up with all these people, and Cordelia believes that she can go out there and just talk to her and try to persuade her, because they're waiting for Charles to come back, because they sent Charles off because they need to make sure that Grace is saying was correct. Now we soon learn that Grace was very correct. It starts out with Thomas and Alistair in like a cubby, like a not cubby, but one of those like town cars type of thing, because of the fact that they were all freaking out because of what Charles had said in that room. And they got to another beautiful image. We love the gays. Pride Month. Happy Pride. So they end up making out, and then they end up having to stop the carriage, and they realize the entire world, the entire city of London, or where they're at, it's down. It's gone. No one's in their cars anymore. Everybody must be home or something along those lines, and they find it weird. Then they go back into the fight with Matthew, and there's like a lot of separate scenes. Once the fight starts happening, everybody has like an own role they have to play. And then Grace ends up coming out towards the end. Once again, there's just so much going on. I just recommend you reading the chapter. And sometimes I'll do that because like it's just so much going on. And that'll be done on 506, by the way. But they all end up back there. And Lucy ends up actually dragging Tantia's a dead husband from the grave. That ends up stopping Tatiana, and she ends up actually like pulling off all of her men and stuff because of it, which was really, really good. Good for Lucy. It drained her of her entire life. And then Grace ends up going and talking to her mother, and that's how that last chapter ended. The last chapter is really, really long. So then Cordelia runs over. This is now in chapter 6, where I'm currently at. Cordelia runs over. Cordelia ends up fronting them, and she's telling Grace to run because she's going to grab the blade and summon. Grace hesitated for a moment, and the brick edifice that rose before them began to open somehow, and possibly the bricks grinding and turning into smoke. And Lilith stepped from the dark doorway, wearing a dark green open scales and with black serpents around her. And she is she's basically telling her to murder. She's basically telling her to murder Tatiana. He's going back and forth between Lucy. Lucy feels really bad because she wants Jessie at this final moment, but she wants to go save everybody else as well. It's really good, whatever. So she's talking about how she wants, Tatiana's whole thing here, she wants to create a new London. She wants to have all the darkness come. She wants to be BDO's homeworld because BDO is promising her all these things. Well, Lilith is like, do this, do this, do this. And then we learn that once Lucy ends up dropping the spell, or dropping his dad, and he goes back into the underworld, that Christopher has died. Yeah, they fucking murdered Christopher. I was not expecting it. I didn't cry, but I was not expecting him to die, to the point where I had to go back and read it like twice to make sure that's exactly what happens. And they did murder Christopher, and so that means Grace is never going to be happy. Which is fine, like, it's whatever, but, like, it was such a cute little romance. Also, what is with her? This is, like, a direct parallel to, like, book 2? Is it Clockwork Angels? I don't remember which one exactly it is, but it's a direct parallel to, like, when, Henry dies. I definitely should remember that, but whatever. Grace. So Cordelia wasn't going to do it on James' behalf because she believes that James, if he wants revenge, would come over and get revenge himself. Yeah, she also doesn't want to, like, break that promise and doesn't want to murder anybody. Then she realizes that Tatiana killed Christopher, and she slits her throat from ear to ear with a blade in her hand, and in one swift movement, slow motion, slits Tatiana's throat open from ear to ear. She murdered. She murdered. There was murder. Murder happened. Murder. We also hear that Cortana can now heal people, which I feel like I somewhat remembered, but wasn't super sure of. But look at how beautiful that image is. It's so gorgeous. I had to come and update you because I didn't want to just be like, oh my god, she murdered somebody, and just like not talk to you about it. Yeah. Alright, I'm going back to reading. I don't know when the next check-in will be. We're just trying to make our way through this novel. That's my main goal for the morning. There's an intermission. That's why I'm updating you. I did not realize that there's an intermission. Hold on. What's happened since the last we spoke after she murdered? She came back. She realized that that Christopher is actually dead. Dead, the way Lucy puts it. Other things. Charles comes back. The Silent City is completely taken over, and London is basically under BDO's control as well. He makes some types of line that Tatiana Blackmore is dead, and therefore I have to come tell you directly as it's possible that this is over. And he can possess humans and stuff, kind of. Basically like tearing them from the inside out. And it ends with them deciding that the humans can be let go and escape, but BDO has to take James with him. And James says, that's fine, you can take me. And then they share, and I love you. And then he's gone, and then I had really short, but I wasn't expecting it. And yeah, I guess I'll let you know how the intermission goes. Weird. So the intermission was that, just about grief. Matthew was also taken. I guess I must have missed that, but yeah. Alright, I have an update for you. So we're going from 27 to 29. And we're going to talk about everything that happened in between these chapters. I'm going to try to summarize as much as possible. So 27 is where... So most of it is Cordelia and all of them leaving London, but they ended up deciding to stay back. Part of BDO's like plea is that everybody needs to leave London in a certain amount of time for, it's like 48 hours or something like that, maybe less than that, for him to be able to do his thing. And so everybody did leave London. All the people, the Clave, decided the fact that London is such a small city compared to the big world, then it's probably better to make everybody leave than it is to try to save it. But if Cordelia and all of the rest of the group that's still here stays behind, or they leave, then they're leaving Matthew and James to basically die, and they have decided against that. And so that's what a big part of all this is. They've been doing a lot of research and stuff, and one of the things I found interesting is we learning more about this world, even so many books into it, which I find so fascinating. Parts I don't remember that maybe are talked about later on in future books I don't remember. And so, for instance, 563 talks about the City of Bones and stuff. And so I have a little bit of a thing here that I did want to read real fast. We're about trying to get back the way Tatiana the Watchers got here, suggested Thomas, the Path of the Dead. They're trying to get back into So, in the past frantic days in the library, they had learned the Path of the Dead was a passageway that led from the Silent City to the Iron Tombs. It seemed that Tatiana had been imprisoned. She had opened the gate from within the City of Bones to allow Bedio's army to march from the Iron Tombs along the path and into the heart of Silent Bear's stronghold. It was a painful thought. I don't ever remember that path actually being something along those lines that we actually got to hear from. And then they started breaking up some jobs and trying to figure out, make sure they can advise and do everything they need to. And Cordelia and Lucy ended up going off on to their own. They start looking for Malcolm, where Lucy tells Cordelia about her problems that she's been having with kissing that we've already talked about. She makes a funny joke about necromancy. Something of those lines. Oh, and non-shockingly, Malcolm tried to do necromancy. That's the most unshocking part of this entire. Lucy says, I have a problem. Cordelia spoke with great care. A necromancy problem? Which I thought was really funny. There's that. And then we go to James and Matthew, who both do agree they learned some work there. Sarah blades are taken away. His gun doesn't work there that was kept with him. Yeah, that's really it. They're trying to survive. Matthew's doing particularly bad. And now that Christopher is gone, it's just going to get worse because of his alcohol problem. Alright, moving on to chapter 28. 28 starts with them in the streets. And they end up going back to Charlotte and Henry's place. I don't think Henry died. Christopher and Henry are so close. It's so interesting. And they're talking about Christopher's lab, and Thomas is really perplexed about all these different things and how it's really interesting that he took onto this hobby. And she says something along the lines of we have to be able to upgrade. We have to be able to move forward in life, and we can't just be back in here. And I thought that was really interesting. And then he started to help. And then I can't remember who it was. Someone makes a note on the lines of maybe they will become friends again, her and Jesse, because of their relationship and because of how they're doing it. Oh, and then Cordelia ends up talking to Alistair, pulling him to the side, wanting Cortana back because she thought of a plan. A very stupid plan. They did bring Cortana is in the place where they fix weapons, which I find hilarious. And she found hilarious. He had held up his hand. I should have told you that. And so they started talking about how everybody believed that when she was the person who had Cortana to begin with, everybody thought Alistair was pissed off about it. But in reality, Alistair was just really scared that his sister was going to die. I thought that was a nice moment, so I marked it because I was like, ooh, that's a moment. Okay, then Bedio and him came, and Bedio is basically doing the same shit that he's doing the entire time. Telling him, you have to let me take over. You don't take over, I'm going to kill all these people, and then blah, 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 blah. It's the same back and forth, nothing really new. And then James has an interesting thing at the very end of the chapter. And then it's on page 593. Just listen, James whispered. If it happens, if you possess me and snuff out my will and my ability to think or speak, then Matthew, you must speak my voice. I wonder what that means. I wonder if that's something that's going to happen. Why bring it up if it's not going to happen? Lucy says goodbye to Jesse without him knowing, because Lucy and Cordelia are the ones doing this outrageous thing to go get James back, because she has to be able to cross over into this world that they're at with Cortana, which means that there's a good chance that Lilith will show up, but she could still possibly kill him and be okay. And Ari had sex and cried about it. Moving on to 29. I didn't mean to give you a 60-page update right now, but we're going to give you a 60-page update. So we're following from 29, because I think we ended with 29. I don't think we actually talked about to 33. I'm 32 because we're not talking about 33 just yet. Figured that was enough time of a gap. So 29, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm really just going to look for the key moments here. Oh, okay. Well, Lucy and Cordelia went into a graveyard to summon Lilith. So she basically says that I will go into this world of Edom if I can destroy BDO, but you have to let me go. And she's like, how could you possibly think you're gonna negotiate with the mother of demons? And she says, well, this is how. And then Lucy pulls up all the dead and they mark her in the one location, and she's not allowed to leave that location until they come back. And Lucy ends up going into this world of Edom with her. They end up making that deal. She also ends up telling her some great information about where to go. So on page 605, there is a garden in Doma, a dark reflection of your guard here. It was mine. BDO made it has a stronghold during his inspiration of my round. Within the guard is a portal I made myself. You pass through it to get back to this world. So now they went to there. They get there and Lucy is extremely sick. I don't think that's what's happening directly now. Oh, yeah, it is. Lucy is extremely sick when they arrive in Edom. Until Jesse and stuff, I guess. I forgot about that. They've been eating for quite a while in my book. Then we jump back over to Matthew and James, and Matthew and James are still, they're not doing well. That's what I know what's hard to you, is that. Okay, they're just not doing that well. It's just not the best self. Oh my god, they're attacked. Instead of going out for a walk, they're patrolling essentially. And they're trying to figure out how to kill the demons. They do figure out how to kill the demons. So acting on instinct on page 620. Acting on instinct, Thomas swung the halberd again, this time driving the blade straight into the rune, slashing across a livering pattern, which makes the watcher spring to his feet and he dies, essentially. So there's like a rune on the neck of the watchers, which are like his little minions, and so then they have a way to kill them, which is great. Moving on to chapter 30, Antique Land. So this one seems very much aligned. Last time before, where Cordelia and Lucy end up going into this realm, and Lucy, just like Matthew, is extremely sick. Lucy is extremely sick because of all the dead around her. She can feel everything opening her up, and it is draining her of her entire being. That's fun. And runes don't work there, magic doesn't work there. I think I already explained all that thing. Keep in mind the rune thing. We'll talk about it in a minute. Okay, next scene is Ari and Anna, where I think they try to figure out a way to get out. They're still trying to figure out a way to get back to the city, and they have an idea on page 627. Oh, Grace and Jesse are trying to make the fire messages work. I think I mentioned earlier, I don't know if I did or not, that was something that Matthew was trying to do throughout the most of this book, is make fire messages work, and so we'll see if those ends up working here in a minute. And it says something along the lines, besides, it's not quite London we're saving, is it London will remain, only its people will be gone. Alistair waved his hand. Yes, it's been Roman and Saxon now, it will be the demon, its ride of plagues, pestilence, and fire. And Anna says, of course, the great fire. And then she runs off. Then we learn on the next page, 628. At the Church of St. Peter, West Chap, Anna said, which burned in the fire in 1666, she tapped on the map with her finger. Don't you see, if we can get into the Silent City through an underground entrance, we can find the path of the dead, retrace the route the Watchers took from the Iron Tombs. You mean if we can make it to the Iron Tombs, then we will have a Scipio sphere of influence, we'll be able to contact Alicante. Ari clasped her hands. Or if by some miracle the Black Friends get fire messages working, we can have reinforced units at the tombs. And we can lead them, the reformers, into the Silent City, from there right back into London. They came with a plan. Cordelia and Lucy scene. So they end up going into this like cave-like wonder type of thing. And in this cave, they made a demon called Cabras, who, just like the Sealy Queen, requests a secret. It requests an untold truth. And you have to say right there, he likes the drama of it. He's like a very dramatic person. Cordelia says something on the lines that she's been well with James from the very time that he had scarlet fever, like when they were kids, like from like 6 years old, 7 years old, whatever. And that caught Lucy off guard. And then Lucy has to say something about Cordelia, not necessarily what she goes with, and she goes to the Paradise ceremony. So before, I don't remember what book this is. I think it might be the first book or the second book. They am going into a Paradise ceremony, and Lucy ends up calling off. Mostly because she took it as an opportunity, because that was right after Cordelia became the Padawan of Lilith, and so they agreed that they shouldn't become Paradise until it's cut, if they can figure out how to break that bond. But also she announces here that there are ghosts everywhere, and she was afraid that if she went forward with the ceremony, she'd be possessed or something along those lines, due to the fact how the ceremony has to go. The ceremony itself is extremely rigorous, but also like it chops a lot of wards off. So she was really nervous about it, and so she ended up actually calling it off completely. And they get into this little spit bat about it. Once again, Steven's having a good time while doing it, and they end up moving on. This is a great character moment for these two. Moving on 31. Okay, then we have a Matthew chapter. He's like he's trying to draw runes. They've been told runes don't work, but Matthew is so sick because of the drinking and stuff that he's doing everything in his power. And so Jane says, I will stay awake until I die and draw runes on you. And so we'll see if that comes to any fruition. Give it a minute. Then we go over to Grace and Jesse, who are still trying to work through this fire thing. And she actually ends up summoning Christopher's ghost without meaning to. And Christopher says, you know exactly what you're doing. You don't need me here. Thank you for thinking of me, but you can do this. And fun fact, she learns how to do it. She gets in her mind. She's like, okay. She also realizes that she had feelings for Christopher in this section as well, which I thought was really sad. Because literally everybody's been taken from her except for Jessie. And now she's back to where she was. So now we are in London. Anna and Ari are walking through London, going to where they thought they could go to, and they end up in the Silent City, which is great, which means that they do have a tunnel. They have a passageway to get back and forth. We have Alistair, who gets a note from Grace that says, if you're reading this is the first fire message that has been sent with success. It's been written by Grace Blackmore and invented by Christopher Whitewood. I love that she put his name on it. It makes me feel so good inside. And like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I have been tearing up quite a bit of the fact Christopher's dead. It's been a death that's kind of like taken its time with me, especially because I just wasn't expecting it. But now they have fire messages, which is great. Moving on to 32, whatever gods may be. This one was interesting, let me tell you. So we have Lucy and Cordelia starting it out. They have like a cute moment, and that's what it is. Lucy ends up being really pissed off at Cordelia for all the lying, and so she ends up writing a book, which I just find hilarious. Hold on. And she took it with her. I mean, in typical true writing fashion, I would have took my book with me too, but that's bad. What? I started a new book, The Wicked Queen Cordelia. And Cordelia, she thinks that she's gonna think it's so mean and hurtful because she's like really rude about Cordelia. She talked about her bosoms and everything else with it. And in reality, she finds it really funny, and they continue reading it and laughing. And it's just like this really sweet moment in a world of where sweetness doesn't come about very soon. This next one is Thomas and Alistair. I'm pretty sure the only big thing that happens in this section is they have sex. Or they get really close to having sex. I don't actually know if they actually end up doing it. The only really graphic sex scene is between James and Cordelia. I guess Anna and Ari's sex scenes are kind of graphic, but not super graphic. But they do some stuff, for sure. Okay, back to Cordelia and Lucy, where they are greeted by ghosts of people that BDO has killed. And one of the ghosts, the ghost of Pansy. We've been word to Harry, anyone who comes into India and drive them away. BDO finds it is an amusing joke to bend stylish hunters to his will and force us to eternally witness the destruction of what was once Alicante. And he asks where he's at, and he says it's in his little tower, which we all thought, and they believe he's taking prisoners. And she says, oh my god, I have Cortana with me. Let me go kill him, and we can let you guys go. And they're all like, oh, cool. And Elias comes, and she begs her dad, who she does believe. This is the first time where she's like, oh my god, it was my dad who contacted me in the very beginning of the book. Because he says, did you get my message? You get my message. And obviously she did. She says, Dad, you were once a great warrior. I need to go do this. She won. She won the little split battle with BDO, and they end up going forward, which is great. So James and Matthew end up creating a plan to try to do this. And part of this plan is that he has to agree to terms of BDOs. So BDO ends up showing up and says, I'm going to kill your parent, I'm going to kill everybody you love if you don't come with me. And so James is like, I will go with you. But first, I have some things. So first, you must promise not to hurt Matthew at all. And I'll leave what you want with a few more conditions, which are, you may not hurt my friends, my family, or Cordelia. And he says, if she strikes me, because he does know she's there. If she strikes me, I can strike back, because obviously. But he says, well, you already told me, because you know women so well. No, James. That Cordelia won't strike you because she'd be harming me. And then we go down to, then she also requires, I require something more formal. You're a prince of hell, and you must vow on Lucifer's name. And he mentions a line of like, you never want to meet him? And I remember, there's only one other series that really deals with the princes of hell, and that is Elder Curses. That's all I'll say about that. And I really don't remember if Lucifer's mentioned. I can't wait to reread those. The second one, oh my god, I cannot wait. Oh my god. The Princes of Hell are so funny. I don't know why. Maybe it's just, I don't know who writes them with her. Maybe it's just her who writes them. They're fucking hilarious. This one's not, but the other ones are. He agrees. I, Prince BDO, Lord of Edom, of the first 9, do swear on the name of Lucifer. He does everything that I will not cause harm befall. You, my dear blood grandson James Harrendale, may I be struck into the pit if such comes to pass. And they disappear. That ends where I'm at. 33. I have that much of a book left. We're almost down to the last 100 pages. And it doesn't seem like we're getting to a resolution, but okay. You, Cassie. I decided I'm going to read the last 3 chapters with you guys. It's like 49 minutes worth of my time. And I'll just cut cut out around it. Editing Jacob's gonna fucking hate me for this video. I figured it would be a much more better experience for me to read it to you. So we have chapter 35, Coda, and then the epilogue to go through. I don't know what Coda is, so we'll figure that out together. But chapter 35, I'm assuming, is the final chapter of the book that will end this story. And then Coda did something, I don't know. And then epilogue. Maybe Coda's like the intermission type of thing, so we can get into the epilogue and really figure out. I do think the story is coming to a conclusion. I've heard mixed things about the ending of this book, so I was really curious. But first things first, the first thing we have to do, and this will be in 2 clips because Jacob's brain cannot handle that. We're going to talk about 33, 34 real fast. I'm going to gloss over some stuff. I read 33 yesterday and I read most of 34 today. So first things first, let's find the first little... Yeah, first section 34 is about Ari and Anna. And Anna's going through this like really difficult period because her brother just died and she wants to kill everybody in sight. Very typical stuff we dealt with before. Okay, now we're back to Cordelia and Lucy. Oh, interestingly enough, so they end up coming to where they need to go. And they get there, and there's a gate, and they're locked out, and they can't figure out how to open it. Lucy says, I've heard him say this thing before, video. And so she puts her hands to it, and she says the thing. And so I made note of that, because I figured that was really interesting, that it finally came around, which was really nice. Okay, we're back to Ari and Anna. But we have discovered that the fire messages do end up working. They actually got it out to part of the clave. They believe this is the part that was the closest to them, and they got to make it back to London, and so there's a whole battle going on. But first we have to get there. So we have Eugenia, we have Gideon and Sophie, Piers, and Rosamond and Toby type of thing are all here, and a few others that we don't know and stuff, and so they're going to go to the fight. And we go back to Cordelia and Lucy, where they end up going into this garden area where they end up finding Matthew. And we have Grace and Jesse and Thomas and Alistair. And they realize that they're talking, there's other stuff going on, but I'm just trying to summarize. They realize that more of the Watchers, is what they're calling them, are coming to hunt them down. Matthew and Lucy and Cordelia all catch up, and he kind of explains what's going on and somewhat of the plan. So interestingly enough, at the end of chapter 33, we have some of the plan revealed to us, which we did not know yet until this moment. He believed that Cordelia would know the right moment to act. He would know Cordelia would do the right thing. He knew all these things going into it. James did, and he said never give up. He said none of you would take Vito's offer or leave London. He was right about that. James guessed all of that. He said, you come for us, both of you. He believed in you, and then we must believe in him, which I thought was a really nice moment. And so they also talked about you can't morally wound him, but she can heal him. So I think that's the reason why the healing aspects were brought into it, is because when she sliced down Bedio in the end of this, tearing Bedio from her back, kind of like the dream, in a way, she can heal James from the mortal wound because of Cortana. And then she gets she gets to leave Lilith. Alright, moving on to 34, which is communion. And then we have James, who's inside Bedio, and they have this conversation back to back, and Bedio goes on his monologue. So, in the monologue on page 695, we are Nabio, said Christy, we are going to Weismer Abbey. We're here for a coronation, mine that is. 2 scores generations of kings have been crowned here as rulers, as you know. I'm a sticker for tradition. I shall be crowned the king of London as a start. After that, we will see how quickly the rest of the land bends its knee to me. I, Bedio, who is meant to never walk again on earth, but the earth stretched herself underneath my boots and surrender. Let heaven watch in horror. You did not see the first revolt against your power coming, great one, and you have not stopped this one either. It is possible you are as weak as the morning star always said. And they go back and forth, you know how it goes. And he ends up actually resurrecting someone from the before his time from the ground. So that was interesting, and James could feel that power as he resurrected this person from their grave. So that's something. Oh, King Edward's coronation. It was something for sure. Alright, now we have Anna, who is talking to all these different people. So she had learned from Eugenia that Will and Tessa had been tested by Mortal and found innocent and complicit with Bedio. Jesse's true identity had been revealed, which had added intensity to Inquisitors and sentence that Heraldales believed that they were in the law unto themselves and must be punished, in regard that there had been a great deal of shouting. And then things took an interesting turn as Charles came out, and Charles said, oh my god, you've been blackmailing me, you fucking asshole. And then came out as gay with blackmail and stuff. That's the important part there. And the fire message is that they need to come. Go back to Cordelia. They're going to the portal as we speak to make it home. They've made it back. We have Alistair, and they're doing some action stuff. And obviously Cordelia cannot raise her sword yet. Lucy realizes that Jesse and her could possibly help with the battle, and so she runs off realizing something through a signature, like a like something, like when they cut out the chimera, there's like a symbol that they have to cut, and so she realized that, and she ran off to Jesse, and they are going to go figure out how to get into Abby. So Ari is all pulled away, and they're all crowning together to protect. And then they're all talking, like, can we actually go through this? Can we kill another one of our friends? And they all kind of agree that if it comes down to it, that's what James would want anyways. He would not want to be attached to BDO for as long as he can. And I agree with that statement, so I think it made a lot of sense. And Ari ended up having to stay back and do some extra fighting. Alistair and Thomas are, they end up kissing, and it's like a good moment and things, but we don't have time to really last on that. So next thing is they're going through this, and they realize that BDO or somebody has brought alive the people that surround them, the statues. And part of that, one of the statues ends up trying to attack Cordelia because they're trying to kill Cordelia. Cordelia can't come kill BDO, and Alistair ends up saving Matthew's life. And it was like this very good moment, and I think it was really well deserved and really well needed, so I'm very happy that it's here. And then Lucy does find Jesse, and Lucy says this on page 719, every time I was with you, every time I touched you, I saw that darkness and heard those cries. Malcolm was wrong. I think I don't believe. Being with you makes me closer to BDO. It makes more vulnerable to him. I think because what happened to you, it brings me closer to the other side, where souls go, the ones who don't linger here. So she believes that she can get in touch with the Silent Brothers and the Night Sisters that are being taken over and their bodies being disturbed by BDO. And so that's what she does, and she sends out a call. And now we're back to 35, and we're on page 722 in my book, and we're going to 780 something. Let's get started. I'm sitting down. We're going to read the final 3 chapters together, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Chapter 35 is called Winged with Lightning, and let's see if the book is A, going to make me cry, or if this is going to be worth the 50 minutes of footage about the film. She made the video real faster than I thought she was going to. Gross. It's very interesting the fact that he wants to be crowned so badly. Because, like, a part of me feels like they wouldn't listen to him if he did get crowned. Oop. Oh, does work. It's because it's a Padawan brain. Because she's connected to Lilith. That's why I'd never heard of this before. Still seems like a plot device, in my opinion. He called James a toy? Oh my god, now he's threatening a baby. I put a marker on I am here because I believe in James. It was a line on page 727. Ooh. Look at him. I read too far ahead! Okay, I'm sorry, but what? Okay, I'm happy I'm reacting to this because I don't know how I feel. James just stabbed himself in his own heart. He asked for the sword, and then they threw the sword. Cordelia threw the sword, and he just committed suicide. What the fuck? Okay, continuing. I know when Ari and Anna die, I like them so much. Aww, I love them so much. Especially like you've read the novellas, I think Ari and Anna's relationship is so well developed. Same thing with James and her, Thomas's and Alistair's. I feel like it's really well developed as well. I think it worked. Ooh, yeah, that is. I don't know how to describe that to you. All the chimeras ran away. Not that they broke out of the bodies. Okay. I would say that it's a mixture between Lucy and the fact that James stabbed himself that everything's going back to normal. Oof. That was a good line too. I really hope this is explored in a future book. A spirit blight. Okay, so BDO is dying. I guess that's the importance next to this context. I'm going to read you a line from page 734. A spirit blight broke through the clouds. It shot downward like lightning, like the flaming arrow, and plunged into BDO. He seemed to catch a light, his shadow burning, and he howled aloud in agony. Father, no! As he is pulled away into the sky. Okay, I like exploring the demons of hell. Like, I want to know what that means. And I'm sure we will in a future book. Oh, he's not dead. Okay, we're back to Jesse and Lucy. I like Oscar. We don't need to think about Oscar in a moment like this. Yeah, it was Lucy. It's cool. What? What? Oh. I have to wonder if this guy tore him up because they just threw BDO out. This is all out of order. Okay. Bridget's back, by the way. I haven't talked about Bridget at all, but she's here. Okay, so Cortana did heal him. Yep. Now we have Lilith. Well, we will in a minute. Back to Jesse. Oh, they die in the sunlight. Oh, Lucy's awake. Aw, that was a good light too. Damn. Oh god. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, hold on. This chapter's about to end. Lilith and... It's all done. She's no longer paddling because of the deal that they made. It had to be Cortana who'd made the final blow. Cortana made the final blow. She made the deal. What a fucking idiot. Either way, he can't use the gun no longer, which is why I'm a bet you anything why they can't use guns in future books. That's very important to me. This was like one of the biggest things with the series that I had a huge issue with is the fact that they use it over and over again. That's like one of James's top weapons. And so I'm very happy that it's explained. Okay. Oh, this is right there. Okay. That was a really good last chapter. Okay. The baby was born. We're on Dakota, by the way. That was a great little paragraph. The first official paragraph on 746. Oh, there's a new video. Okay, he's moving on. Oh. Okay, let's talk about it. So Coda ended. Coda was like a bit of a breather, I think was the point of this before we jump into the epilogue, which we're about to jump into. I'm very curious. It's a pretty long epilogue, unshockingly. I did say it unshockingly. Oh, the next one's in April 1904. That's Cordelia and Lucy's short story. Either way, not important. We're not reading it tonight. The new video comes, like I said, and he proposes that he's just going to leave the entire Shadowhunter world, well, these particular Shadowhunter people, alone eternally. But he also says something that I think will come up in Wicked Powers. So I don't want to spoil anything that happens past the point of this series, the last hours, depending on how you're reading the series. And maybe this is the first book series you're reading in the Shadowhunter series. I don't really know if I recommend that, but maybe that's what you're doing, and you do plan on reading the rest of them, and you don't want spoilers. So I'm not going to spoil it exactly, but I will mention this, and I'll talk about it in my timeline video where I will spoil it. Interestingly enough, this could come back in a future book that's not even been out yet. That's all I'll say. There's no need for that, because he says, I will owe you a favor, Silent One. Because I don't think we've ever dealt with BDO past this point, past this book series. I don't think so, because one of the last proposing questions that we had, one of the bigger proposing questions that we had was of Tessa's father. And that the fact that it was answered in 1903, like she's known, is really interesting and complex based on where I remember we left that storyline. So I'm curious to see, she's no longer her dad. This is a new person of hell. Curious to see what this does. Okay. That's all I got for you. I'm very curious to see what that is as well, because, like, if you know, you know. If you don't know, I'm not going to spoil it for you, where this particular character, Brother Zachariah / Jim, goes in the future. And we're now in summer. I feel like this is Christopher's funeral. They're all contributing something into this coffin to bury their past selves. I'll summarize it here in a second. Okay, Charles is gone already. I love the Blackthorns so much. It's a complicated family tree. Alright, before we move on to the rest of the epilogue, I want to very quickly run through everything that everybody gave to the coffin, just because, like, it was a very long scene, okay? I feel like we should talk about it. So, they're sitting in there, and they dug up his old coffin that's empty, Jesse's. And, okay, Matthew put a bottle of brandy. Ari put the letter from her dad. Comics, he put one of the first fire letters that he tried. Was not great. into it because he is now happy and settled into his relationship. Alistair has a bottle, for hair dye because he dyed his hair. Cordelia had her scarab that her dad gave her on her wedding day that she put in there. Anna put part of her coat that she would wear. We all know the coat in there. And for her and Ari. Grace put the locket in there that she gave to James. That set everything off. We also learned that they had basically forgiven Grace, but she's moved on and is working where Christopher once was. And then Jesse held up the hilt of a broken Blackthorn sword to reclaim his name. And that's everybody. Okay, I just want to run through this real fast as I found it important. Oh, they have their wedding rings though. They're going to go adventuring. It's cute. Okay, so yeah, we got the ending for Cordelia and Jesse. Now we're moving on to Lucy and James. Cordelia and James. Now we're moving on to Lucy and Jesse. Alright, he's completely clear from the Enclave. Green Land of Fairy. Interesting. Oof. This is really interesting that we get to hear the story of how this happened. See, that's a lie. That's really cute that it's a lie. Sorry, I'm crying. Okay, whatever. It's fine. You won't be able to. I can't talk about any of these thoughts and feelings. So many spoilers. Okay, now we're Alistair and Thomas. I guess I should describe what happened. I already talked about how Cordelia and James are going on their honeymoon, right? I think I did. If not, they're going on their honeymoon adventuring around the world. This entire thing was to wrap up Jesse, Lucy, but also wrap up the loose thread that they left open with Malcolm Fay. I can't really talk upon it other than the fact that he's really mad at Shadowhunters. I'll talk more about it in my timeline video to take note of for future books. But here I'll say is it's really interesting, and I had some interesting things to say as I read it, as you guys could see. And then we have learned that it won't be until she sells her first novel. I don't know if she ever sells this novel because they never talk about Lucy Arendale's novels in future books. Maybe that's something maybe it'll be something that's wrapped up in to Wicked Powers or something along those lines. They're not married because of that. Right? That's everything. Oh my word! I love the family so much. You know, okay, hold on. I have to talk about it because I know some people are like really pissed off about the amount of LGBTQ rep in, especially the later these books particularly, because they believe that we weren't around then. Okay, I'm gay. Gay people have been around for fucking ever. I mean, it's in history books. Just fucking look it up. But either way, I will agree that if we're trying to represent actual society and stuff, I don't think everybody is forgiving. But these are Shadowhunters. Okay, this is a fantasy world, so let's keep that in mind as well. I personally just love how there is obviously bigotry in this world because it's been shown time and time again. I mean, there's certain parts of City of Bones in particular, the beginning parts of Alex's life, that I'm not particularly excited to go back to read. Lines and things that happen in that book that even have been changed. There's certain lines in the original City of Bones book that have been changed because Skittish Claire had thought about it and had said, no, that's really harmful and hateful for X, Y, and Z reasons. Especially back here, Thomas just came out and said, I love Alistair Carstairs, and Gideon's like, I didn't even know you liked him. And then Eugenia, who's a sister, came up and was like, if you guys all hate him, we're leaving. And his mother's like, what? No, we love you, whatever. And I'm just like, yes, give me that type of love. And then then you have the stuff with Ari and her parents, and her dad, I don't think ever forgave her, but her mom did, and her mom, I would believe, actually probably ended up leaving her dad because the Inquisitor is whatever. But her mom did forgive her and accept her for loving who she loves, and so I just think it's a great message. And these are technically written for teens, even if I don't necessarily agree if this one should be, but it's fine. I think Cassandra Clare wrote her first adult novel without trying, because this one and Clear in Darkness, by far, the two most adult. There's certain parts, I was going to say as well, parts of Tales of Shadowhunter, they're also really adult, but oof. But there's moments and other ones that are, I don't know. Okay, back to reading. I'm on page 771. They're gonna go help his mom move in, and they're gonna go live together. This is the final scene. Yeah. Okay, now we're all together again. Oh, I guess we're getting Matthew's ending, because he's ending up alone. I just love them so much. Henry and Charlotte are such kind people. I can't believe I thought he died. Bad moment. It's a very sweet paragraph that he said to Cordelia. I'm not going to read it to you, but 775. Aww. Oh my god. We have been in the crucible and come out as gold. Oh, James, you getting it tonight. Magnus. What a weird conclusion for him not to be a part of that. Never really thought of it. Okay, so the bonus story takes place in 1904, which is a year after the events. And it's Cordelia and Lucy. I finished it. Give me a minute. Let me get propped up in a different position, and then we can talk about it fully. My final thoughts on Chain of Thorns. Okay, so I want to come in here and give you guys the final check-in for Chain of Thorns. Obviously, we did the long clip, so you already know my reactions to the end of the book. So we'll just talk about the book as a whole. What am I rating it? I think it's getting a 5. It's either a 4.75 or a 5. I think it was a pretty good conclusion. It didn't bring me, it kind of brought me a little bit to tears. I shed a 2. 1 or 2, as you guys could tell, because I thought I found it very satisfying. I think that was my big takeaway from it. So sometimes I don't find it as satisfying as I would hope or want, but I found this one to be extremely satisfying. I feel like some of the conclusions to the stories. Also, after reading Chain of Thorns, it did make me want to reread the entire trilogy again, just because I think I would love Chain of Iron so much more now. After reading this one, for some reason, I just feel like as a conclusion, as a trilogy, as a whole, in this little world of the Shadowhunter world, yes, I do think I much prefer Queen of Air and Darkness and stuff over here, because it brings all the characters that I personally just absolutely love and adore together. I think that is the one sad thing about this, is we're not dealing with demons and warlocks and silent brothers at the end of this. They're not going to be coming back into future books. They're going to have references probably now, because they're really well established characters. In Wicked Powers, we're never going to have to see these characters again and see where they grow and pass this time in their bloodline. And when I do more timeline and stuff, if we move into the next section of my timeline video, that maybe I will get to see a little bit of their growth, of maybe their kids and stuff. But overall, we're dealing with ancestors by this point. You know, these are great-great-grandparents. That is one sad thing I'd say walking away from this book that I have. It's not like Cassandra Clare's fault or anything like that. We're just dealing with normal Nephilims, and they die, is the case. Other characters do not die. Other characters do show up in future books that are referenced in this way. I mean, Magnus Bane is the most clear image here for you. He is what starts the Shadowhunter timeline, and he'll probably be the one that ends the Shadowhunter timeline. I did like it. I think it's a 5. On reflection, I think it's a 5. There's a lot of similarities. I think that was my only other takeaway. There's a lot of similarities, I think, to the ending of both Clockwork Princess here and parts of that series, but also a little bit of mixture of Queen of Air and Darkness as well. I think under the originality category, I think it could have been just a little bit stronger, but I'm really happy we dealt with some bigger things here, and it was such a much more mature and darker book, which I also really enjoyed, and I think it has that extra edge. So it's a 5 for me. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, please give me a big fat thumbs up. It took 8 years to edit and 8 years to film, so please go ahead and like it, please. And if you made it to the end of the book, put the rose emoji in the comments if you made it to the end of this video, so I would know. Now that we've gone over my entire outro review for Chain of Thorns, let's talk about that epilogue. So the epilogue sets off chain of events with Brother Zachariah and or Jem. Let me point you in the directions of where those things can be solved in case you just want to read those without any spoilers. So you're actually going to jump into Ghost of the Shadow Market, which is all about Brother Zachariah / Jem. You're going to want to read the novellas. Alright, you're going to want to read the novella Learn About Loss, which is the 3rd novella in the bind-up. You can also find these individually in case you guys don't want to spend money on the bind-up. If you want to know more information about Tessa and Will and things, I recommend you also read A Deeper Love. And let me check the last one here. And you're going to want to read The Wicked Ones. That includes You want to read Learn About Loss, A Deeper Love, and The Wicked Ones. I will mention, Learn About Loss really is about the whole deal at the very end, the epilogue. Then you have A Deeper Love, which really does follow Tessa, but also follows Jem and stuff, and gets a little deeper into some of the things that are not talked about in these novels. Then The Wicked Ones continues on with a conversation that happens in A Deeper Love, so if you want to continue on with that, you have The Wicked Ones. If you guys also want a much more detailed timeline, I recommend using Cassie's that she personally built on her website, the Shadowhunter website, and any of the novellas in the Gem or Ghost Shadow Market bind-up are the ones you're going to want to pick up for this continue on with the epilogue. It probably adds about 130 or so pages onto your reading, but if you're interested at all with that story, because we're never really going to hear the answers outside of these things, I was pleasantly surprised when I did my reread for these books. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed everything else, and I'll talk to you guys all next time for another beautiful video. Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions on Chain of Thorns, and goodbye.